you, Professor. We're now going to Honorable Swart.
Thank you, Chairperson, and thank you for the very helpful research and the book that you prepared. The questions that you prepared will be very helpful as the inquiry continues. What I would just want to emphasize firstly is that we are committed. This will be a long process. We are not fatigued. We are invigorated to shout from the rooftops what's been going on and to further expose what other reports have exposed already. This is the process of oversight, and maybe we have not fully fulfilled it in the past, but it is time for us, as you've said, it is a watershed moment. And in my 18 years in Parliament, it's probably the most significant inquiry for us to embark upon. What I did want to just ask you is, we've got the historical issues that we faced with, and that is the dilemma, obviously, with an inquiry of this nature. Looking historically, but you've also pointed out what is happening at the present and what is happening in the next few weeks. And I would ask you to also monitor that, and if there's information that you'd like to further furnish us, feel free to do that, Chair, with your permission. That is an accepted practice, that is if there are further issues. Obviously, there's so much in your booklet, but what strikes me as one or two major issues is the impact on the economy, and you refer to that on page 3, the South African economy and prospects for economic development. Would you be in agreement with a well-known economist who estimated, that's Iraj Abedian, that our economic growth should be around about 5%, and due largely to state capture and rent seeking, we are looking at around 1%. Maybe not necessarily agreeing with the particular figures, but the impact that it has had, given that Eskom holds the largest state guarantees and has drawn down a lot of that, and we are talking about, as my colleague indicated, not millions, but tens of millions of rand. Then I'd like you to, and it is an issue which we will also be interrogating, your comments on how funds of this nature are able to move around bank accounts and the Reserve Bank. Surely the Reserve Bank would be aware of such large amounts leaving, whether it's leaving the country or not. And we've seen in all the reports, and I've gone through a number of the reports, these massive figures moving around the country, and we might need to also inquire from the Reserve Bank as to how these, and other banks, how these bank accounts and how the amounts move. One of the ongoing issues that is of great concern, and that is the issue relating to the generator at Coburg. And besides seeing it from an inquiry perspective, you also highlight the danger that the Coburg generator tender presents. And now I'm asking you that specifically to unpack that slightly, because we living in the Western Cape, you've indicated on page 10 of your document that the cost of the protracted process goes beyond the 5 billion price tag of the Riva bid. Given lead times for the manufacture of the generators, the replacement will no longer be possible in the scheduled window, raising concerns around reliability and nuclear safety. Now, please, that's a key issue. We need to understand the implication of what has become colloquially termed state capture on the Coburg generator tender, is whether from a power perspective, from an expert, just please unpack that for us as well. The other issue relates to the McKinsey trillion issue. And whilst a lot of this information is in the hands of the law enforcement bodies of South Africa, surely there are foreign law enforcement bodies like the Justice Department in America that would be also interested in this information. where they have got jurisdiction in terms of their own legislation as well. To your knowledge, has this been raised with, in particular, the McKinsey trillion issue with those law enforcement agencies in terms of their specific act, which gives jurisdiction, not only because McKinsey is in America, but also in other areas where the dollar might be used or emails might be used that have a server in America, that whole issue of foreign law enforcement agencies that might be used as well. Because remember, we've got the government on the one hand that is implicated, you've also got private companies that have been implicated, and that is an issue which we will also be looking into at great length. Chairperson, the other issue that I wanted to raise is the concern, as I mentioned earlier, about the historical perspective, but that there are journals and there's speculation that the pace of state capture is picking up in almost going towards the exposure, because the people involved are becoming very aware of what is being exposed in the media and in all the various reports. Is that something that is of concern to you? And if the reports are correct, that I understand there's been a cabinet reshuffle earlier this morning, that there's a new nuclear minister, and that is the previous state security minister. Is that a matter of concern to you as well? Chairperson, when we then also consider the issue relating to the Tegeta and the coal contracts, that has been dealt with by other portfolio committees, and it is being dealt with. Would you like to comment on the issue relating to the National Treasury report on the Tegeta coal contracts that was discussed at length in the Public Accounts Committee, and it now seems that the Minister of Finance wishes to withdraw that Treasury report? Is that an issue that we should be concerned about as well? That it seems that there is concern about that information, and with the new minister, it to me doesn't make sense. I think there's sufficient information in that National Treasury report that we should be very aware of. One of the issues which is also a great concern is the optimum business rescue practitioners. You mentioned that in your report, that they filed a complaint in terms of the Corruption Act with the Hawks, alleging that payment had been directed elsewhere, not into Optimum's account, to assist it with its liquidity as purported by Eskom. So am I reading, I understand that the payment was actually not made to the business rescuers, but it was actually made to other persons, and can you unpack that? Gupta-related persons. And when you look at that whole context of that particular contract, which we'll be looking into in greater detail, it seems there was a lot of Eskom's involvement. There is prima facie evidence that we will be unpacking. Are you aware of a guarantee that was granted by Eskom? And is that normal practice? In my experience as a lawyer, that is unheard of for an SOE to grant a guarantee to another company for the purchase. And that purchase price does not seem to have gone to the business rescues as it should have. Chair, at that stage, those are some of my questions. But rest assured that we will be taking this very seriously, and this will be a lengthy process, and we will get to the bottom. But this doesn't detract from the necessity of law enforcement agents to do what they're supposed to do at the moment in South Africa. If you take the Public Protector's report, which is a part of that, has been taken on review, only the issue relating to the Commission of Inquiry, The factual findings have not been taken
Thank
on
you,
review.
Mr. Swart.
Thank you,
Your
Chair.
10 minutes is up,
Thank you.
Professor.
Chair, I'll respond briefly. So, Honourable Swart, firstly, the issue of impact on economic growth. There's no question that Eskom is absolutely critical to our growth prospects, both through providing a reliable and cost-effective electricity supply, but as we all understand, it also has huge impacts on contingent liabilities for National Treasury. So when our institutions undermined in the way that they have through these kind of capture, rent-seeking, corruption activities, that has huge dangers, and we need to understand those. And we can see what the contagion effect could be on lenders as well for other state-owned enterprises. You've raised again the issue of funds, which Honourable Mazon also raised. The banks, the Reserve Bank, the Financial Intelligence Centre certainly must know a lot more than has been published, and it could well be, if this committee has time, that there's the opportunity to probe a little bit more around where this money has gone. Coburg, you're quite right that the delays in the tender and the court cases and the dispute about who gets the contract have delayed the replacement of the Coburg steam generators. And this is of concern. This is a nuclear power plant where you have to have the highest levels of engineering and safety standards. Those steam turbines are scheduled for replacement at a specific time. We are overdue and over date. I actually spoke to a colleague at Coburg just the other day, and he confirmed that Areva contract is running very late on the replacement of those turbines. Trillion, and then McKinsey, your questions are mainly around McKinsey. Yes, complaints have been raised in New York at the Securities Exchange by Corruption Watch around McKinsey, and so this has been taken forward. We should just note there was a press statement by McKinsey International today, which provides more details on their side of the story on that contract. Estate capture escalating. I mean, I think we can say that at least there's been some pushback. Key individuals, remember, that were facilitating this are no longer in place. But it does seem as though there does seem to be an urgency in continuing or achieving as much rent-seeking as is possible in the period before 2019. I did see that our State Security Minister is now our Energy Minister, so this might have interesting implications for nuclear in particular. The Tegeta coal contracts, National Treasury, those National Treasury reports are extremely thorough. They've been supported by PwC investigations. There's a huge amount of data, both on the Brakfontein coal contracts and also the Optimum story. And as I said earlier, this committee could help bring these things to light by subpoenaing those reports and bringing them into the public domain. The concerns expressed by the Optimum Business Rescue practitioners around the payment, it seems to be quite clear what happened there. The prepayment was motivated on the basis of Optimum investing in further coal mining equipment to secure the coal supply to Eskom. There's no evidence that that money was used for that. Indeed, all the evidence suggests that that prepayment was used to purchase Optimum, although Eskom has claimed that that amount has effectively been repaid through coal supply now. And then the guarantee that was made to, it was actually a guarantee, I think, made to APSA against purchase of Optimum by Tegeta, that was offered. That's extremely unusual. I know of no other case where that's been. It wasn't actually used, wasn't drawn down, and it's now cancelled. But of course, there's a cost. There's a cost to putting in place an instrument like that. So one could regard that as wasteful or unlawful expenditure.